excited about this particular one because this person is near and dear to our hearts. Almost kind of like we've been neighbors for a good while.
Yeah, we were neighbors like forever.
But again, welcome. We'd like to say what's up to Kendra and Daniel Tillman. What's up, guys?
Hey.
Now you gotta tell us. You gotta tell us where you're at because a lot of times, we gotta give a plug out to the studio that you are in because we're in 3 different cities this day.
We're representing all over the U.S. right now.
That is true. That is true.
But we are in our normal place when we do these in the we call it the pod, right? The AZ Pod Studio. We're here with our good buddy Martin. He's in the background helping us out, making sure our sound is straight, and we appreciate that.
Yes. And so we're here. We got Phoenix, Arizona, where you guys are at, the Tillmans, and then we're in Jacksonville, Florida, and then we have the lovely Kelli Center that's in Atlanta. Now I'm not sure. Atlanta's just huge. So
right.
So what part of Atlanta? Because you got
it's Buckhead. It's Buckhead. It's still Atlanta, North Atlanta.
Okay.
Oh, you in Buckhead. Okay, Kelli.
looking to move soon.
Looking to move out of Atlanta or out of Buckhead?
Oh, Buckhead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You don't like it?
It's very expensive.
Oh, all right.
That's why I said, okay, Kelli.
You live here in Phoenix. Kelli, how long has it been since you moved?
Oh, we left in 2017. Can you believe it? I know. I can't believe it.
Doesn't feel like that. Yeah.
Not at all.
Wow. So you and Kingston took off in 2017. How old is he now?
He's 16. He just got his driving permit.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. He was slow to get it.
So, I would be slow to get it in Atlanta too, as much traffic it is. I mean, when we was there for Thanksgiving. And you think COVID, there would be no traffic. That's not in Atlanta.
It was a 5-hour drive, and then we got downtown by you, and we were stuck for 2 hours.
Oh man, that's always road work too.
Yeah, it probably is.
It's rough. But when you said neighbor, I thought you was talking about Kelli, right?
Kelli was a neighbor of us when we lived in Phoenix. We've been out here 6 months
down
now.
the street neighbor.
Well,
and not full blown neighbor.
But her apartment complex was next to ours. How about that?
Kinda.
It was walking
enough.
It was definitely walking distance.
Yes, there you go.
That's a neighbor.
That's a neighbor.
Right.
Now I remember driving in Atlanta, and it was crazy. It's not like here when you get off, you can get right back. If you get lost, you can get right back on and keep going. Atlanta, you got to go around the world to get back on.
Yes, you do. And it's actually the traffic you guys sat in probably wasn't that bad. It's much better. I'm telling you, it's still crazy, but it's much better than it was.
Oh, okay. Well, praise God.
It was horrible.
They're like, well, we're not coming back then.
Good.
Yeah.
So what is it like having a team driver? This is your first team driver because he's your only son, right?
Well, he doesn't want to drive.
What?
Literally, we're like, you ready? I told him he can have my car. I'll get a new one when he's ready.
Oh, that's so good of you.
Wow.
Yeah, their generation's a little bit different. Like Lauren was telling me the other day, I didn't tell you this. She was like, I don't know if I want to drive. And I was like, oh no, you gonna be driving.
Y'all don't have my daughter.
Our kids.
When my daughter was able to get her license, she was wanting to drive like on to the other side of town the same night.
The same day.
Really?
That's great.
No, you're not doing that. And threw out all my tires. No,
hey, you telling too much of her business right now.
Right. She may not appreciate that.
It's all live across the globe.
Right.
All on YouTube.
But Chris had his permit in Arizona. He hasn't got his yet. And then here you have to wait a year before you can get it. So he's not gonna be able to get it for a while. And then Lauren, she's just more like, it just seems a little scarier. So, but she's like, I'm gonna do it, Mom. And I was like, yeah, you are. Because she come get your license.
Those last minute grocery store runs and all that, picking up siblings from school, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
That's the reason I waited to get mine, because I knew my parents were going to make me drive my siblings everywhere. I was like, I'm okay.
Yeah. I was the baby, so I didn't care. I was like, I'm getting mine. Like, I ain't got to drive nobody nowhere. This is independence. That's why I'm questioning their generation. This is independence, y'all. Don't y'all want that? I would think. I know I did.
Yeah.
Well, as you can hear us, those who are listening to this podcast, we are parents and we enjoy parenting, but there's also a side of just like, OMG with kids and everything like that. But we have entered into, I think this is our 4th podcast, and we've been really hitting the subject of counseling and how important counseling is. As we've been using this one word, demystifying just some of the things that people have with counseling. We talked about some things with men. We talked about how important that we think men should be involved in counseling, but we have so many different subjects. So please go back to some of our podcasts, look at some of the videos. We believe that you'll be blessed. If you're listening to these on YouTube, we ask you to click and subscribe and share it with other people that you might feel that might need to hear this information. And then we also, we've been using licensed counselors because we don't want you just taking it from just some of the experience we have. And of course, we've got a wide range of experience. Of course, we've been married 19 years. Tillman, you've been married over 23 years.
Wow.
23.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Y'all some young bucks.
But even with that experience, we want to defer a lot of our experience to people who know how to diagnose, get into the psychology and the mentality, and know how to express a lot of those things that sometimes we take for granted, and helping us really get the skill sets of communicating and pulling certain things out. So,
and we're hoping this is really going to help people, because a lot of times we see people wait till the last minute to try to get help. And we're like, why wait till your house is burning down? You know what I mean? Like, even if it's just a health check-in once a year, there's nothing wrong with it. Counseling's amazing. So we wanted to bring on the person we knew who was amazing at counseling, which is Kelli, and talk about some things.
Yeah. So we're going to jump in. I think you're about to say something, Kendra, but we're going to jump in.
I just wanted to share. I'm going to go ahead and share Kelli's bio really quick so that everybody knows she's not just our friend. She's a licensed professional counselor and the owner of Centered Living Counseling and Coaching Services. She's passionate about helping individuals to become mentally and spiritually whole so they can be free to live their best life. She feels especially called to bridge the gap between the spiritual and mental health communities, dispelling misconceptions that keep people of faith from receiving the support necessary to meet their mental and emotional needs. With more than 16 years of experience, Kelli works with individuals, couples, and families from all socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds. She has experience in addressing an array of needs, including depression, anxiety, relationship communication, and trauma. And she also provides Christian counseling. So we'll tell you a little bit more towards the end of the podcast about how you can connect with her on Instagram, Facebook, and on her website.
All right.
Wow.
Now we laid out some questions in preparation. I found myself really kind of talking about just some of the things, childhood type of things that happen that affects us when we get married. And I was thinking about before I got married to Angela. It's so funny. You don't really think about the things that you've been holding on, because we get saved. We start going to church.
Right. We're like, I know Jesus now.
Yeah,
I'm good.
we always say we're good.
Not like that.
And one thing I'm learning about marriage, one thing I'm learning about many things, you can say many things, that some things are just not automatic. But especially with marriage, it's not automatic. And I think that's the best word I can express is that sometimes we get married and it's just automatic. We love each other, or we can solve problems. And then when we find out, when we get married, we have all these type of things that from our past start to come up. All these issues. Yeah, all these issues that are just sitting there.
But I think when I talked to you, Kelli, I was so excited when I got off the phone, because I was like, ooh, because I love like childhood stuff. I'm like, let's talk about it, right? So to know that's like one of your specialties, one of the things you love to do, I was super like, ooh, I got off the phone like, yes, it's going to be amazing, because I just think I know when we have done premarital counseling, a lot of people come back to us later and they're like, I didn't know this was going to be this hard. I always kind of look at marriage like it's the college or the education that God put you in, that if you knew what it was going to be like, you might not have done it. You know what I mean? Because you have to die to you, and you have to, like, I know there's been times in our marriage where I've had to heal in areas that I probably didn't want to heal in order to show him that I loved him. You know what I mean? So I think sometimes it's hard for people because it's like, I don't know if I want to deal with that right now. You know what I mean? But if I love you and my behavior is hurting you, then I need to deal with it in order to keep this tight. So I just was really excited to be able to talk about this topic.
And then with the new buzzword, I was talking to a couple of my colleagues. I'm a teacher, and so we're moving into our new school, and we was happened to bring up the subject of parenting, and I was talking about my son, and one of the words they used was triggers. So I think sometimes we hear that word, a lot of people, you're dealing with some triggers. But again, what we want to do is defer to Kelli, because you do a lot more of these type of deals with probably individuals, with couples, and you're really pretty much an expert of kind of knowing to identify, as you listen, you kind of like, I know what that is. And so we're going to jump into some questions. And just really kind of go back to our childhood, kind of go back to a younger age, and really kind of unpack some of the things, triggers that we might have experienced that affect our marriages and stuff like that. And so we're going to jump right into it.
I think my first question for you is, how do you help people recognize their trauma or rejection, abandonment, whatever their issues are from childhood, and how it affects their marriages?
So I think when we first started talking, I was telling you about this worksheet that I love to do with couples. I love couples. And I probably should have sent it to you both, but it's called an unconscious relationship agenda. And I like to do this within the first couple of sessions within the first few sessions when I'm working with a couple, because I want them to kind of like settle down to, like, like you said, most people come in when the house is burning down. It's hard to get people to come in before. It's hard to get, especially men, to come in before that. So I kind of want to like calm them down and let them know that they're with the perfect person for them. So what this looks at is I have them pick their primary 3 caretakers. So, and I have them do it as homework, and then I go over it with them, because I always have to do some digging and pulling some teeth. And in it, I find out pieces of people's story. So I have them look at, usually it's like mom, dad, and another caretaker. Sometimes it's not. Even in that, it tells a story, which still tells me more information about who you are and why you function the way that you function. But we look at your primary 3 caretakers. Even if one was absent, I ask about that person. We identify at least, like 3 to 5 positive traits about them, 3 to 5 negative traits. And I tell people what's important is to think of that as your childhood experience. As adults, we always give excuses for our parents' behavior. Well, they were working a lot, but it was because of this. And, so it's as an adult, I can understand why my parent behaved a certain way, but it's really important to consider your experience as a child. And then even if it's, there's always a parent that they have a hard time coming up with anything negative for, because that's telling in itself, right? Or a parent that is hard to come up with anything positive for. So I'll do digging there. And then we look at 3 of their unmet needs as a kid, 3 things that you needed most that you didn't get. That could be quality time, one-on-one time, acceptance for who I was, things like that. Things that you needed that you didn't get. And it doesn't have to be 1 from each person, just 3. And then we look at childhood frustrations, what you felt on the inside, and the way that you acted out on the outside. Where I really hone in is the way that you acted out as a kid, 18 and under, how you responded to pressure. Did you shut down? Did you rebel? Did you, excel at school, start playing more sports, working a lot, doing drugs? Like, how did you respond to pressure when you were a child? And what I end up doing is then kind of reading back to them what it's like your unconscious agenda when you are selecting a potential spouse. And so it reads that, I'm trying to find a spouse who is, and then I'll pick like the most common positive traits, but I won't really fall in love with them unless they're also, and then I name off the most common negative traits. When I find a person with this blend of positive and negative traits, I will, form an intimate relationship and, may even get married. In my marriage, I will try to have my spouse only have the positive traits so that I can finally get the adult version of those unmet needs, one-on-one time, affection, whatever. But I will, and my wording is off because I'm going off of memory, but in my marriage, I will also tend to stop myself from getting those needs met by doing the adult version of shutting down, overworking, blah, 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 the ways that you act out as a kid. So, and then I read it for both people. And I tell them, so the point of this is that you married the perfect person for you. Especially, I like to do that, especially if people have been in more than one marriage, because I tell them, you take this piece of paper wherever you go. You undoubtedly are going to come up with someone who has a different bag, a different mix of the same positive and negative traits of your primary caretakers. The biggest takeaway from that, more so than that, so the positive and negative of the primary caretakers is just to normalize that you married the right person for you. Because most of them are like, oh my God, that's you, right? And some bag of it. But the important part of that is to know that whenever you're not getting the things that you need most, those 3 unmet needs, you're going to respond the way that you did as a kid, an adult version of it. So what we end up having is 2 kids who are triggering. There's your word, triggering each other. Because a lot of times, I'm responding to the way that you're acting out. And, you're acting out because a need is not getting met. And instead of finding out what need is not getting met, are you communicating what need is not getting met? You just start acting out. And I start acting out too. So now we got 2 kids having temper tantrums. So a lot of the work is just getting each other. So, I tell them the beauty of marriage is that, you get to help each other. This is how you help each other heal. So when I see your behavior, hopefully you can communicate it. But if you can't, then because I know that this is your behavior, now I take these little sheets home, study them, usually couple that with the love language thing, so people can be intentional with that as well. I have people go online and take a fresh test because everyone's like, oh, I've done it before, but it changes over time. Your love languages kind of adapt to one another as well. But the goal would be how I can help you heal is for us to identify what is not being met. Usually one of those 3. What is the unmet need? Is it not? Are you not getting quality time? Are you not, being heard and felt understood? And then we kind of talk through that. And then I do other tools like iMessages and helping them learn how to actually communicate and hear each other, like say what it is that you're feeling and hear what the person is saying. So a lot of times our message gets, I like to say, lost in the sauce, especially for women, of our emotions. So how to kind of hone that in. So that's a lot of the work.
So go back to the traits. You talked about some positive traits and negative traits. Describe some of the familiar ones that you kind of come up with. I know sometimes you'll see some commonality between couples on those traits.
The positive and negative traits are really of your primary caretakers. So someone like, for example, the other day, someone said, oh, my dad was a narcissist. And I'm like, well, describe narcissist. So that's a label, but tell me what he did. Well, he was distant. He was preoccupied. He worked a lot. He, yelled, things like that. So you really think about what you would describe as positive and negative characteristic traits of your primary caretakers.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
Oh, interesting. Is that one of the first exercises that you do with the couple when they meet with you?
As long as they're not coming and biting each other's heads off, then yes.
Oh, so you got something different if they punching each other in the throat.
Oh yeah, we can't get to that. That's actual work. Like a lot of times, for the couples that argue a lot of times our sessions are problem solving. It's just trying to get them to just slow down enough to hear each other. It's like I can hear what each of them is saying, and I can hear where the misfire is, but they can't. So a lot of it is trying to get them to slow down enough to hear each other, for me to teach them the skills and for them to actually practice them. So then a lot of it is them coming back and what went wrong. Oh, well, yeah, I know I should have did this here. Here's what I could have did different here. So if we've got so much tension, like we got to work on that before we can even, because what you guys are talking about, that's deeper work. Can't even get to that if y'all are ready to divorce because you are arguing all the time
Mm.
over
What,
laundry.
hearing you say that is so profound that so people think they think the arguing and whatever issue they're dealing with is the deeper work, but what you're saying is building that intimacy, looking at how you got to how you became the person that you are. That's more of the deeper work that
Absolutely.
you have them do. That's
Sometimes it's telling them to get back into don't move out the house. You need to sleep in that same bedroom. It's basic stuff like that a lot of times, because that's something too, is looking at different forms of intimacy, and that you're not going to feel in connection. Like, I don't want to people end up hiding themselves. One of my favorite scriptures that I always mention to people is in Genesis, when it talks about that, Adam and Eve were naked and were unashamed. And to me, that's the perfect picture of marriage. That's what you should be. But we end up hiding ourselves in marriage and putting up these walls because we don't want the other person judging us. And you can't grow with someone that you're hiding from.
Selah. That's good, that you cannot grow with somebody you're hiding from.
Yeah,
Wow.
we had a interesting session with another friend of ours, who we was talking about men and their struggles with counseling, and he did a great job of just kind of expressing what he feels why men don't have a hard time in struggling. And we identify pride, and I would agree that sometimes a lot of men have a lot of pride. And we don't want people knowing our business. It's kind of like I was using the example of dental. I don't know why I didn't want to do it, but I just didn't want to tell my wife that I had some teeth that were broken in the back, and I just didn't want to tell her. And then when we had to go to the dentist, and they're all looking at my teeth, and they said, "Well, we're going to take this one out. We're going to pull this one out," and she was like,
"Babe, how long has this been going on? And why have you not said anything to me?" And then he was like, "I just was embarrassed. I didn't want you to know." And I'm like, "But babe, this is your health. Like this." I was just like, "I'm not tripping. It's okay. Like, I just want you healthy." You know what I mean?
And again, I can't really truly, that's where I guess the struggle is. And hopefully that's where you come in, is just trying to pull certain things out of men. But what is the thing that you can identify, or just take us into describing what you are saying to when you see a man that's really struggling, or got his arms folded up, or he's silent, he's kind of disconnected,
or he got that look on his face like, "I'm only here because she made me come."
Right. What invite us into that process of what you are saying to the fellas and trying to break down those walls that we often sometimes put up? Because
I always start with you only get out of this process what you put into it. So if you don't want to be here, you shouldn't, because we're not going to get any work done. And I tell people too, like, one of the biggest things that I see with couples counseling is that one person wants to work on the marriage and the other one doesn't. And then the other one's ready to come around, but the other person's over it. So we can get you both, moving in the same direction at the same time, then we'll get the most out of it. I also ask for a commitment to stay away from any negative wording, like alluding to divorce or separation, like, even, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if it's worth it. What are we doing? Staying away from that, because if I hear you saying that, why am I going to open up and really tell you what's wrong? It's no longer safe, right? It's not a safe environment. A lot of times I think women, I got to go back to the Bible. I always tell people that if we look at, all the scriptures that talk about marriage, and, it says, that although there are more that go more in depth about, how a man should love a wife, but I love the Amplified version because it gives all these different words to say the same thing, that is respect. And women don't really get that men have to feel a level. We think of men as these strong, prideful, whatever, but they're actually very sensitive. Men are very sensitive. And you actually have to create a very safe environment for them to be able to share. So if I feel that you're going to judge me, or it's going to come back up against me later, I start with rules too, which I'll say in a second. But if I feel like it's going to come up against me later, you're going to judge me, it's going to be held against me, it's going to change the way that you look at me, they clam up. And so a lot of times I do usually have maybe separate sessions, and then come back together. I will never tell what the other person says. I'll help them tell if it's something that needs to be told. But a lot of it is getting the women to stop, calm down, let him speak. And, if he doesn't feel safe, he's not going to share. So sometimes I have to meet with the men separately to get them to open up, to share what it is. And then it is separately to get them to calm down and, get us to come together. But the ground rules I start with is that what we say here stays here. So that means that you can talk about what we talked about in session, but it can't be used against the other person in a negative light, or this is no longer a safe space. No hitting below the belt. So we don't take things that we don't say things that we can't take back. Right. So we still need to be mindful of the words that we use. And then again, no making threats to leave the marriage, staying committed while we are in the counseling process.
So how do you deal with a wife when you've already gave those rules and she keep hitting him under the belt? Like how do you deal with that?
I cut them off. I call them out. And if they, depending on my relationship with them, I may just, there's this, I haven't figured out how to do it, but I really want to show people how much they talk over each other. Like I want it to have a little button, like every time one talks over the other, so they can see who's talking over the other most. And that, and I always, you have to go back to kindergarten. When your mouth is open, your ears are closed. You have to go back to those simple things. And then sometimes, I've had couples, oh my gosh, I've had some couples I work with for years, and I would sometimes just let them argue and then say, if you guys want to pay me just to argue, sure, but I don't want to take your money and feel like we're not getting any work done. I've had to dismiss couples for that too, because at that point it's just a waste of my time and a waste of their time.
So, how do the couples come to you? Or is it usually one of them that reaches out to you, or is it a friend of theirs? How does that usually happen?
It's usually one of the spouses will reach out. It's usually the wife. And if it's the husband, it's my wife told me to call.
Okay, I mean that's actually a good thing if he actually will initiate and call you. Right?
Absolutely.
He made the suggestion, so it looks like it would seem like in that scenario he at least is open to.
Is willing.
Yeah. It's willing. That's awesome. Yeah.
So I want to get a little deeper. I know you, we scratched the surface a little bit, but again, let's get some words in here. So let's, when you identify that as let me go back a little bit, because I'm trying to, sometimes when you ask questions, you want to make sure you set it up the right way. So you say, what do you mean? You express yourself, but okay, if I grew up and my parents didn't give me the attention that I need. So let's go back to I'm going to use my example. I grew up in a single parent home. So the typical things that you might see in growing up in Detroit area is a lot of single parents, a lot of single moms raising their kids. Mom is not working and you're left to your own devices. And then you go through life, and it's not I'm not going to say it can be positive, it can be negative, whatever, but you get into a relationship. And what I noticed for me and her is that I felt a little needy because I didn't have that attention from my mom. No, okay, number one, my dad wasn't really in my relationship. But one of the things that we found out was when she wanted to hang out with the girls. Now, of course, I was good with the fellas. We get together every now and then. But from my perspective, I'm good. I got my wife. I'm good.
He was like, I got my boo. I don't need y'all.
I really don't. I'm good.
And I was like, yeah, I got you, but I still need my girl.
I'm good. And so when she wanted to hang out, and this is early in our marriage, I'm kind of now, you can go ahead. I got YouTube, or I got something else that I can. But before then, I was like, where you going? How long are you gonna be? And the first couple of times it was okay. She would be like, oh, I'm doing this. And she would explain herself. But then she started saying, like, why you keep on asking me all these questions? Why do you feel like you're interrogating me? Because I can do that sometimes. And so what do you say with somebody who's dealing with those issues? Now, so I want to just kind of focus around that one. When you observe or diagnose that particular thing, what are you saying to? It can be either or. It can be the male or the female. So what do you would say in that particular situation?
So a few things. One, it's making sure that you're communicating what your need is. So I would say instead of interrogating her, you need to use an I message, right? I feel statement is, I feel the emotion you feel when you, the action the person does, and I'd like it if you, and what you want the change behavior to be, right? So this is just one of the skills that I'll teach people, for example. And so then the response should be from the person receiving the message should be, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is I go out too much. No, that's not what I said. And then you say it again, right? Which is important, because when that happens, then you can see the processing. Because a lot of times what happens is the other person just responds, argues, why are you asking me all these questions, right? But what's happening is everyone hears different. So it's important to pair it. That's parroting. So you give your I feel statement, which is, this is what you're doing. This is the emotion it's causing in me. And this is what I'd like you to do instead. And then I regurgitate that to you. And we do that back and forth until the sender feels like the person received their message correctly. And then they can respond with an iMessage if they want. So part of it is getting couples to slow down. That's a long process, right? But once you practice it, then you get a lot better at it. You get a lot better at doing it. So it flows a little bit more smoothly. So the first thing would be communicating, because what happens is a lot of people just end up, interrogating, asking questions, throwing accusations. Remember, going back to having that childhood temper tantrum, instead of communicating what their need is. I want to spend time with you. So for the one to spend time with you, then it's important. I always encourage couples to set up regular date time, regular, family time, friend time. Having that schedule is really important. Hellos and goodbyes are really important. How you start your day and end your day, right? Greeting each other at the start and end of the day, going to bed together if you can. I try to encourage that as well. Those are times of connection, times of intimacy that are really important for the health of your relationship, the health of your marriage. So those things are just some little things that I stress.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's
very good.
Last time we talked to Dominic, and part of what he said was that they did not know how to communicate their needs. And so they would end up really going at each other. And when they were in therapy, she gave them the tools. I believe it was a woman therapist, gave them the tools to do what you just said, right? To be heard and tell the other one what they heard and have that dialogue. And for a while, it took a while for them to build the muscle, right? So they had to keep going back to her and reiterating the process until finally, because I asked him, "How did you know when you were healthy again?" He was like, "When we were able to do it at home without her being in the middle of it." So, and he also said it's still something that they have to continue to work on and be focused on. But they know how to do it now. It's a tool that's in the toolbox.
And Daniel's comment just touched on a question that I have for you, Kelly, is so we learn how to communicate as children, right? How to communicate what our needs are,
we learn how to talk.
Right. So you're saying we don't necessarily learn how to communicate what our true needs are, right?
No,
so
we don't.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I do think that is one of the greatest challenges of you don't even realize how much you have internalized what you grew up seeing, watching, things that were unspoken that you picked up on, and now that's how you communicate in your relationship. So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that.
In school, they call it your parent tapes, your parental tapes, right? Like sometimes, I've worked on it, so I don't yell anymore. But when I used to yell as a parent, I would hear my mom, right? Or if I would point my finger, I would be like, "Oh, it's my dad," So the thing is that, again, people don't do the work. They're not aware of it. One of the things that I've focused on a lot too with counseling in general is just getting people to slow down enough to pay attention to the mind-body connection. Like sometimes we're just going through the motions so much and we're busy with, throes of life that we just don't stop to analyze ourselves enough or try to improve. Some people don't want to do the work. Changing your behavior is not easy. It's work. And some people feel like you should just accept me as I am, you know?
Yeah, well, and not understand that we need some change. Because I think I love what you said about the parenting tapes, because by default that's just what you know, right? It's all you've ever seen. So I mean, I feel like it's not your fault, but you have to, if you want something different, you have to go through a process to get that difference. I'm reading this book right now called Atomic Habits. And it's all about experience. It's like, in order for you to change, you need to practice different behavior, or not different behavior, but different habits. And eventually your, the habits that you're practicing become automatic. But I love that, because I still remember being at home and the way my mom communicated, the way my dad communicated. And I recognize a lot of that in me, and how in my own relationship, some of that had to change.
To have a healthy, successful marriage, it does.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, I would love for you to. So I was listening to another podcast today, and this is something that I do hear quite often. There is this idea that it doesn't take all that, right? So our parents have been married for however many years. People might think. They never went to counseling. They never went to a marriage conference. They never read marriage books. So why do we have to put in all this effort in order to have, to be married? And I would love for you to say, what would your response? I know what my response would be.
By her face, she looks like she has a great response.
It's one of the first questions I ask couples, especially Black couples, is, can you name, and I would love to do a longer one, but can you name a couple that that has been, has been married for over 10 years, that is happily married? And unfortunately, a lot of Black and brown couples cannot. They're like, oh, well, yeah, this one. And I'm like, but are they happy? Well, what do you mean? Do they sleep in the same bed? Do they enjoy each other? Things like that. And unfortunately, a lot of us cannot. We can't name them. So then you have these younger couples that have no one to look up to. And so they're out here winging it. And thankfully, the younger ones are more willing to come into counseling. But, you have the older ones. Again, my question to them would be, are they happy?
Right. That's so good.
And don't you think that I also feel like we live in a different time? We have way more distractions. We have the way that we, freedoms that we have, they've changed so much. So maybe the people that we watched were not as fulfilled or happy in their relationship. They didn't feel seen. They didn't feel really known by their partner. And so we think just because somebody's been married for 35 years, that means they have a successful marriage. When in reality, if they are not at that naked and ashamed place that you talked about in their relationship, where I can be who I am and know that I'm still loved in this relationship, is it really, a successful marriage? And that's what I think about when I hear those comments about, does it really take all of that? It's like, it does, depending on what type of marriage you want to have.
Yeah, that's so good. I think, Kendra, you said a lot. And when you were saying it, I was thinking about when you said just kind of the last part. Sometimes when you hear people talk, or I should say this, you hear couples talk, married people talk, and they talk about how long they've been married. It's almost like seniority. It's like I've been on the job for 10 years, and I'm gonna get me a watch at the end of this or something like that. And some people express it as like, yeah, we've been married 7 years, or we've been married 10 years, or then we get to the older people, we've been married 35 years, and it's almost like a seniority thing. But then, are you truly happy?
Right, because I've had to deal with older women sometimes, just talking or mentoring them, and they'll say something similar to that, but it's like, well, I've been saved for 20 something years, and I'm like, well, I had an uncle who was 84 and still getting DUIs. That don't mean anything, because are you growing? I can be in this but am I growing? Am I happy? Am I fulfilled in my Christian walk? You know what I mean? Am I a nice Christian? Do people meet me and think I'm nice? You know what I mean? Do I have fruit? And I feel like sometimes people feel like I've been doing it for a long time and I'm great and it's fine, but it's like, do you have fruit? Do your kids feel like you have fruit? Do they feel like I love what we're watching? Like our kids came to us and they were like, you guys are like relationship goals for us. And I was like, that is the biggest compliment in the world. You know what I mean? So now we're trying to teach them how we got here. And part of it was we just totally surrendered to God. Like I was like, I'm honest, Lord, my chooser is not good. And I need help choosing my spouse because I'm a fail at this. I'm like, I'm not good at it. So just talking to them about the different things. But I do agree what you said. I feel like people feel like either they've been in it for a long time, they've been doing it, and they're just automatically good at it. But that doesn't mean that.
Yeah, I listened to that and it kind of missed me a little bit because just like when Daniel was talking about when we was talking to Dominic, I mean, when we listen to counselors, there is such a skill set of building that you get. There's certain expressions that I never thought that it was because of my childhood, the reason why I act the way I act. It's almost kind of asking the question, why do I act the way that I act? Why do I get so frustrated? And I think that's what happened for us early in our marriage, because our first 3 years, it was praise God.
It was blessed.
Yeah, it was, but it was an awesome period because I had to ask those questions. Like, why do I get so upset about this? Why do I clam up, so to speak, when she pisses me off about this, or she kind of, nitpicking me about this, and I want to say something, but I don't want to hurt her feelings because if I say what I really want to say, I'm going to hurt her. And then I'm thinking about in my past, why did that happen? Because how my parents communicated. A lot of times when there was arguments, it was very violent, it was very loud, and so you're just clamming up as a little kid. You're looking at this stuff. And so when you get in the relationship, well, I don't want that, but then I don't really know how to express how I actually feel. So asking those whys, because just like when you saying, Kendra, I wouldn't know how to respond. Does it take all that? Yes. I think your marital relationship is probably one of the biggest investments that you will ever make in life, because we talk about housing and business and everything like that, but we always forget about how important the marriage relationship is and how much you need to invest. And I thank God for counselors like you who spend the time to help married couples. This is a Living Well production. This is Love for Real. We want to talk about how we can help couples really start to express themselves, because we're not here to the divorce bash, but we want people not to get divorced. We want people to work out their unresolved issues.
Because in my mind, if you don't work it out, you're just taking it to the next person.
Hello. I try to tell people. I take them back to that paper. Remember, you take this wherever you go. So you're going to take those same unmet needs. You're going to take those same ways of behaving. You're going to take those same attractions. Different bag, throw it up, and throw it out and see what we get. But it's going to be the same thing. So until you learn to work through that. And I think, the difference and why this is an important conversation is because a lot of young people, and I actually think that culture, like even with these younger, like 20-year-olds, hip hop culture plays a huge part. I think you see a lot of these younger people entering marriage, whereas before, people who are in their 30s, didn't, because they saw no successful marriages, so they didn't get married. But now the trend is, rappers get married and they buy houses. So now people are getting married, but they don't know what they're doing, right? Like the Cardi B's and Offsets, they don't know what they're doing, and they're not getting the help that they need. And I think it's really important, like your first, but in addition to premarital counseling, really your first year of marriage, you should be in counseling. I think
that's good.
And then getting, I tell people too, you need to have a mentor couple. You need to have a couple that you guys trust, that you can go to kind of normalize what you're going through, to normalize what you're experiencing. Because I think people give up too soon, when it's life happening, and it's very normal.
Yeah.
So I have
being in counseling your first year of marriage, I go back to, and you were referencing the Bible earlier, when people got married in the Bible, they would take a year off Like, so if they were in the Army fighting, he would release them to go home and just be married for that year, to get to know each other. And I think today what we do is we get married, we overextend ourselves, both get jobs, but we buy beyond both our incomes. And so there's a whole lot of pressure to perform, and you don't have any connection time, any time to be intimate, any time to be focused on your marriage, because you're focused on building wealth, getting a career, or some people have kids right away. And so that's a whole lot of pressure coming onto the marriage. So one way that I like what you said there, because in today's society, if we're doing all these things, we need to have the support around the marriage to teach us to connect, to be intimate, to take time out, to do your vacationing together, all of that, which you don't know going into marriage, because all I saw was my dad getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning, not coming home until it was dark, right? And work. And fortunately for us, we were in a different place and had more resources because of what they did. But I learned from them, and if I had continued that, then we wouldn't be in a better place. Now, my parents have been married, I don't know, 47, they're 48 years.
Their 50-year anniversary.
Yeah, so great, awesome. And they still work through stuff, right? We have a great relationship. Great. They call me sometimes. So and I definitely call them to lean on, their experiences and things like that. But yeah, the things that I learned from them, there are some good things, and there are some things that, okay, I'm going to unlearn in order to make our marriage go to the next level.
So Kelli, I have a question. When you do that sheet and somebody has needs, of course, from childhood that are unmet, but let's say it's like high insecurities or something, and it's like out of the norm, it's like almost where it's like I think we've seen it in a few couples where it's almost like it's so much pressure on the spouse to fulfill it that it's almost like it's not even normal that they can fulfill that on that kind of level. What do you do for people like that? Or what do you try to encourage them to do?
So that's really where the individual work comes in, because when I'm with a couple, I want to focus on the couple issues. So I'll kind of sort through the mess, right? And so some of it is like, that may be, some unnecessary pressure you're putting on yourself, or that's that parent message coming up. These are expectations that you have on yourself that no one, we clarify, is your spouse placing this expectation on you? Are you feeling this from them? Are there things that they're doing that add to that? That's the work that we'll do together. But the individual work is kind of sorting through, a lot of it isn't sometimes anxiety and things like that show up, and people don't realize that they're throwing, their anxiety around or throwing up on one another because it's your safe place. Right. So we sort it out. And that's the individual work that we do together, is kind of working through what that deeper stuff is. And then when we come back together, then it will be, how can you reinforce the positive behavior changes and messages, even if that's the spouse calling out. Like sometimes I'll say, is it me? Is this me? Is this you? Or is it the marriage? Right. Or is this my box, your box? So it'd be, sorting out like, okay, if you're saying this now, is this a you thing? Is this something we need to work out? Or is this something you need to communicate to your spouse? Right. So helping the person to see, whoever the in that situation, if it was someone in particular who, because sometimes there are, right? Sometimes, and especially in couples work, there is someone that has more of an issue that's impacting the marriage. Then we have to kind of sort through that and say, okay, now is this a time where we need to use an iMessage, or even the spouse to point out like, hey, I feel like you're kind of throwing up on me right now. Does this have to do with me? And, having that. And I'd like to say things like that because it's a visual. Who wants to be thrown up on? Right. So sometimes people need a visual.
But thank you, Kelli, for saying that, because I say it all the time. And my husband looks at me like, oh, that's so gross. But I'm telling people, I'm like, give us the real, like, we don't want the clean stuff. Like, give us the, like, you know what I mean? Like, this is throw up. And he'll be looking at me like, so thank you, Kelli.
She don't say throw up. She says poo poo. I think feces is just gross.
No, I do say throw up. Sometimes I do say poo poo though. Yeah.
So, Kelli, how long does it typically, or let me put it this way, how many sessions Is there an average, or does it just depend for couples that are coming in to where you see that get healthy again?
It depends on who's willing to do the work or not. Like I said, I have fired couples who I've worked with, as a couple in particular I'm thinking about, who I worked with for well over a year. And, you know, I call people out after a while because it's draining to me. Like, you can keep your copay, I'm sorry. But because you're not getting better, right? You're not doing the work. Like every time we're talking about the same thing over and over, and it's the same issue. We're going over the same skills. You guys are not trying the skills. So then I come back to so why are we here? What do you want from this? Do y'all want to get divorced? Do you want, and sometimes that's just my personality, where sometimes I just have to get a little like, no. So, I think of a couple of couples that I've worked with where I had to talk through the realities of divorce. And sometimes it's the realities that's like, okay, well, yeah, let's kind of work through this, and letting couples know how close they were. Like there's certain couples that I regularly will meet with independently and together, and I will have to, come to let them see the reality of the state of their marriage. Like some people are just like, you have to have sex regularly. Like people don't want to talk about that. People are uncomfortable. It comes up. I can't be uncomfortable with it because it's an important part of your marriage, right? So people have to understand that. So we have to sort through, is there a biological issue? Is there something else that's triggering? Because this is an important part of your marriage and your connection. Also, other forms of intimacy, like having those uncomfortable conversations. So I have to bring it up so that they can kind of get the giggles out, and then we can go ahead and work on the issues, because your marriage is hanging in the balance and people don't sometimes realize how serious it is. And you'll be surprised when you come home to divorce papers that this didn't happen overnight, So we have to, if you're here, especially if I see it, that it's really that serious, then, hey, I'm seeing it that serious. So I'm going to ramp up how I'm approaching it with you. I don't remember the original question. Sorry.
But
I think you answered it.
Yeah, you answered it. I want you to kind of go in just real shortly the realities of divorce, because again, I don't want to. I definitely understand. There's a lot of situations. A lot of our background in ministry, as you know, working in the church, doing premarital counseling, and also doing marital counseling, but again, not from a licensed counselor's position, from a biblical standpoint. But then just hearing people's problems, just doing life with people, you just want to get in there with them and help them in any type of shape, form, or fashion. But discuss those realities, because I think in this society, as we was kind of talking about how culture is a little different, the way I envision it sometimes is that we can be very selfish. We got all these different types of platforms. I'm trying to do my business. I'm trying to write my book and everything like that. And then in the hustle and bustle of trying to do all these type of things, I'm putting this relationship and I'm trying to hold on, but it's really inconvenient from what I'm passionate about. I'm not really focusing on those type of things. And so when you talk about the realities of divorce, what are you saying to people about that? Because I think sometimes people are okay with it. And I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say people are okay with it. It is a reality. People,
I would say
divorced.
It's a option. And I think people, sometimes look at it all the time as this is an option, what I mean? Where I think it would be better if people took divorce off the table, and it's not such an easy exit. You know what I mean? It's not an easy escape.
Yeah. So that's one of the main things. Like, obviously I work with all couples. I work with all type of couples, but especially for my married couples, I like to stress that, because that is, to me, one of the big differences between somebody that's been together for, I don't care how long you've been together, 20 years, whatever, versus when someone is married. The difference is when we're married, then as far as the safety is important. Me feeling safe with you. Right. So divorce shouldn't be on the table, because if we're married, then this is a safe space. I'm not going nowhere. You're not going anywhere. So therefore, we can talk about anything. And I don't have to worry about me saying the wrong thing and then you going out with your boys or whatever, because technically we're not married. So I always stress that there should be weight on the marriage, right? There should be a level of safety and security that comes with marriage. So that in itself, because we've taken these extra steps to be legally married, that I can be open with you in a way that I wouldn't be open with anyone else. I can be vulnerable with you, right? That is really important. So I like to stress that to people, because I don't think people think about that. You know, for some people, especially if they were together for, you know, I've had people who've been together for over a decade and then married for 1 or 2, and they're having these issues, and it doesn't feel different, but it is different. There's a difference. So I, like to start with stressing that difference and why this matters, right? So it's a big difference. I'm so sorry. I'm getting
realities.
When you talk to them about the divorce.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the other thing is that, we can go over the whole, because when people think about divorce, they think about all the things that would be beneficial to them. So they think about like, oh yeah, okay, we'd have to split this, we'd have to split that. They start going over the financial things, and it's not so bad, right? But when we talk about what is the reason that you're really wanting to get a divorce, let's really talk about it. What is it that you think? I even recently had a conversation with someone, and they were like, I was explaining to them that the healing, and really just kind of breaking that down, that the work doesn't begin just because I don't care if you've put a deposit down on a lawyer. Like, this is your life and your future. That $2,500 you can go make up, whatever, right? But when you are really, people think that the problems will vanish away when they get a divorce. No, guess what? You take you wherever you go. My mama always say that. It's true. You take you wherever you go. So really, if this is so unreconcilable, then, which I don't believe, I tell couples, you can come back from anything. Now, there will be changes that will be required of you. You may have to change your life. You may have to change a lot of different things, but you can come back from anything. There's not anything that you can't come back from. It will require work from you. Now, if you're not willing to do the work, say that, but don't put it on the other person. Don't say, oh, we don't communicate. No, say, I'm not willing. So part of it, that's just me. I'm an in-your-face person. I want you to own the fact that you don't want to do the work. Now, if you want to own the fact that you don't want to do the work to make your marriage work, I don't care. Like, I'm telling you, because a lot of people come to me for the Christian part. And so it'd be like, well, I knew God. I've had much more men come to me since COVID, but several I knew before. I clearly heard God say no, but I did it anyway. I was like, okay. So then a lot of the conversations are, so you're praying to God. Tell me what you do. So you're praying to God about what to do about your marriage. Let's rewind this. And a lot of it is kind of breaking down, like, one of the scriptures I reference is Romans, where it talks about, the good, perfect, and acceptable will. Whichever one your marriage may be, you marry, bruh. So God is not going to tell you, yeah, go ahead and get divorced. Now, it's permissible. You can choose to, so I want you to own it. But you're not going to be praying and be like, I'm not hearing from God, because he ain't going to say, yeah, go ahead and get a divorce. Now there may be certain circumstances where that is what you choose to do, but you need to own it as your choice. Because a lot of times, again, people think, well, the problem is the other person. I'm going to get divorced and things are going to go away. Now you're on marriage 4. That's not how it works. You take you wherever you go. So I say, okay, if you're deciding to get divorced, you guys can go on and live very happy lives. But guess what? You still got to do the work, because you still take those unmet needs. You still take those ways of behaving. So unless you want to continue in this same sort of cycle, you're not going to meet someone who just magically fits into this box and just accepts everything from you, unless y'all are miserable. So any relationship, any marriage is work. You pick your poison, but either way, it's work. So a lot of it is getting people to see that reality. One of the things I like to do with couples, and I'll do it with both of you, take your finger and point it at each other. Now, don't move your hand, but look down at your fingers. How many of your fingers are pointing at you?
Oh, 3.
3. We
Yeah,
should 3. We should look at ourselves 3 times as much as we look at someone else. So we are trying to get you.
Can I borrow that? That was good.
I'm taking it.
So when we're like, again, we're arguing, right? It's like a quick draw, who can fire at the other person first. Again, when we do those things, we don't feel safe. So if I have a problem with you and I'm angry at you, what I should do is go to a corner, think about the situation and say, okay, Kelly, What could I have done differently? Yeah. They did this. But what could I have done differently? And if I come to you and name 3 things that I could have done, you know what? I realized this. I apologize for this. I apologize for it. I'm not even going to call you out on your stuff. I'm going to own my stuff. I guarantee you. The other person will be like, you know what? And I apologize for this too. Now we can move forward. So we spend so much time trying to blame the other person. And if you want to do that and use that as an excuse to get out of your marriage, who am I to stop you? But let me tell you, the reality of it, you still gonna have you. You're gonna still take these same issues. Now if you feel like the other person isn't willing to work, let's talk about it, because sometimes people really are. If they hear that you're willing to work too, again, is it a safe space? Are we covering ourselves? So sometimes if people are willing to do the work, so back to your question about how long people are in counseling, it depends on who's willing to do the work and who's not. Because depending on how long they've been together, the depths of the hurt and the pain,
Yeah, along those, the reason I changed so first I asked how long, and then I asked how many sessions, because again, reading a book on habits, he was saying that it really doesn't matter how long, because the period of time if you do something twice during that period of time versus if you do it 200 times, you're going to get a very different, effect. So as long as they're coming in and doing the work is really what I was trying to get at. If they are doing the work, about how many sessions does it,
it depends. Like I said, I've had people that I work with for years, and they'll, think they just come in when they need to solve some problems. If arguments are getting too bad. So everyone uses therapy different. Right. Okay. So it really depends on how I always ask people too, what do they want to get out of counseling? I used to do this thing with couples I don't do as much anymore, where I would have them each write to me separately how committed they were on a scale of 1 to 10. How committed were they to fixing the problems in the relationship? Because that's very telling too. If, one of them says, 8 and the other one's like 4, I'm like, okay, so your foot's out the door. But the other person don't even know, that's helpful for me if I'm getting, resistance or whatever. So it really, it depends on if both parties are willing and both parties do the work. I mean, some people just come in and they just want the skills and they go home and they practice it. And so, we may not meet that often. On average, with counseling in general, people come twice a month. I have some couples that when they're, wanting to intensely work on something, they meet weekly, but you burn out on that, right? So those are the couples, honestly, that do all the arguing. They want to meet every week to argue. That you're arguing when you're not with me. That's like, you're arguing on your own. Why are you gonna come here and argue too?
One thing you said, you mentioned the word copay. So one of the problems for couples, or just people in general, sometimes is it costs a little much for me to go to counseling. Right, it impacts my finances. I can't do it. I'm working. So, are you saying that couples can use their insurance to come and talk to you?
They can. You will find that a lot of therapists are moving away from it because they just don't compensate us for our time. It's just not really worth it, but you can, all insurance companies, most plans cover couples counseling as well. So it could just be your copay. But, I'd like to tell people that say that, you could come. I tell people in general who are coming in for counseling, as far as that, when they ask the question of how often should we meet, you have to consider your time, right? Your willingness to work on the situation and your finances. And that is it's a realistic thing. You need to take that into consideration when you map out what you can do. If you guys can come in once a month, then come in once a month. And I can give you a lot of homework to, for you guys to work the plan in between so we can make the most of our time together, if that's what you can afford to do. And honestly, I kind of feel like people who, and this is why probably too, some therapists choose not to take insurance, is because when people are paying for it, they work for it. You don't want to waste your money, especially for my clients that are paying out of pocket. I'm really like, you guys really want to pay this much money and sit up and argue every week? But to that reality of the financial piece too, you have to consider how bad of a problem it is. There are lots of things that we will pay for in the drop of a dime, and people are not always so willing to invest. This is an investment in your marriage, right?
Yeah.
Divorce is way more expensive than a year worth of counseling.
Yeah, we say the same thing on the front end, but even before you go into counseling, if you just do some preventative work, like go to a conference or read a book or, do some of those things, like you do when you're trying to build your money or build your wealth or invest in real estate or get this course and that course. Do that for your marriage, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you start talking to people when they say, hey, I want to get counseling from you, because previously, we was with the church, so it was free. You was a member of the church. And now it's kind of like you start putting out numbers, hey, $200 for about six sessions, which I don't think is much, but it's like, we're gonna go somewhere else.
Good. Yeah, I was gonna say that it doesn't matter how low you put it. If someone, if they don't want it, they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times, the higher you put it, the more quality, the more they'll put into it. So.
Yeah. My I guess my last question. I'll often, I think this is kind of the most. Well, me stop, because I'm kind of like I have to listen to Kendra sometimes. Kendra's like, don't be saying all, sometimes. So in some of your sessions, I'm pretty sure you heard about a lot of infidelity. Certain things, and the analogy sometimes I use when I'm talking to my wife is that when you hear about unfaithfulness, whether it's the male or the female, it's kind of like you take a plate and you throw it on the ground and it shatters, and it seems like it's you can't really fix it no more. It's pretty much over and done with. Now that you've kind of gone outside the marriage, and you deal with a lot of secrets too. A lot of persons, they're just damaged because I didn't know this was happening. It was a surprise. Sometimes I hear from men, I was going to hold this information. I didn't want to hurt them, but you are hurting them by keep on stepping outside the marriage. I'm talking about Christians, but anyway, the point is, again, you talked about the work. So take us into the process specifically when you heard somebody that's been unfaithful.
Well, it depends. I like to, again, stress the safe zone space is really important, right? And a lot of times, unless this person was like just a cheater before even if they were a cheater, honestly, a lot of times I'll work with that person privately to talk, to see why, like what this is about for them, because there's something else going on there. But a lot of times, there's something, again, that they're not getting within the marriage. So they seek it outside of the marriage. And so we really have to kind of identify what those gaps are, what those holes are, and, talk about that. That's going to require vulnerability. And again, a sense of safety for both. I have to be able to take it, right? I have to be able to hear it. The man has to trust, or the person, excuse me, but I'm saying man because I think a lot of times men especially are ones that can clam up if they feel like you said, the information that I'm going to share is going to hurt you. So that's why I said that. A lot of times in that situation, I'll have to tell, the woman, prepare them and their reaction. Sometimes it's just our facial expressions. You never know what is triggering and what could be shutting that, your husband down. Sometimes it's just your body language. And to your question earlier, sometimes it's not just what you saw from your parents, it was what you experienced. So as a kid, if every time I went to say something or I did something wrong, my mom did a look or she did whatever, and I clammed up, then that's what, and you happen to do the same thing that reminds me of her. And you may not know, then I'm never going to share, right? And so now we have ourselves in this situation where there are things that I want to be able to tell you, but I don't feel like I can tell you because you respond a certain way every time. So that, but again, I don't think that those things, I know that you can come back from those things. From the person who was the offender, I'll say, in the marriage, that will require a lot of transparency. That is something else that people do not want to do. And I'll call them out on that. If you don't want to do it and it's too much, all right, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about why it's too much. Why is it too much to, check in with each other, or, things that you should naturally want to do. I want to rebuild trust. So when I used to work with kids and we were talking about trust building and how you build trust and tear trust down with your parents, we would do Jenga, right? So every piece that they laid, they would say all the things that would build trust with their parents. And then, every time we pulled a piece out, it would be things that tear trust down. And we would call it our tower of trust. So you would see that it's, it may take, I don't know how many pieces that game has. Let's say 100 pieces to build this tower, but it may take only 7 or 8 to tear it down. And sometimes I will have couples do that. Because I also will, as a part of date night doesn't have to always cost anything. It's just time of connection. So that's something that a couple can do. You can, do a tower of trust, and we can each lay a block and say things that we can do to build our trust within our marriage, and see how quickly it is to tear that tower down. Right. And so
That's real good.
So yeah, that's a good, little exercise to do. But that doesn't mean that you can't build it again, but it's going to take all those extra steps. Now, if I don't want to do the work and I'm annoyed by it, let's talk about that. Because sometimes it's not that I don't want to check in with you, it's that you badger me when I call. Right. So let's talk about that. Like all of those things. But some of the nuances is that I can't even tell you that I don't want to call because you badger me, because you're going to go off on me about me being upset that you badger me, because now you're going to throw it in my face again. So a lot of it is for me to, sometimes I will let couples argue because they tell on themselves when they argue. So I'll listen to them as they're arguing, and then I'll stop and kind of pick point and be like, okay, go ahead. And then I'll, jump in and hear and call them out on that stuff. And now if in that, because I've done that sheet in the beginning, I know that this is from your mama, this is from your daddy, and this has nothing to do with your husband. It has to do with what happened to you when your experience growing up. It has to do with your past relationships. It has nothing to do with your husband. But, and sometimes that's an eye opener for people too. And then we go back to those unmet needs. We go back to the ways that we act out. Always comes back to that. We go back to those I messages. We go back to the parroting. And those are the things that we do to repair. That's how we repair it. And so when things happen too, when we talk about trauma, just kind of tying trauma into it and those repeated experiences. So sometimes it feels like, someone could have done something to you, or your spouse could have done something, and you feel like the response is like unwarranted. Like, why am I being met with this level of intensity for something that should be minor? And it's because this was a wound that wasn't caused by you. All you did was tear the scab off. Right. I don't even know that. So because I don't even know that, I can't even tell you that. I just think you're triggering me.
That's so good. I think too, the thing I keep hearing is like a lot of times, we talk about like Christians, what's the benefit of marriage? Of course, it is an example of the Trinity. It is something that's God ordained. It's oneness. It's a representative of Christ, like all these good things. But what I'm hearing is how much of it is growth for you as a person. Because to me, I could go through life, experiencing my childhood, experiencing how my parents talked to me, experiencing how I received it, and never really get an opportunity to work on it. You know what I mean? To me, he brings it out. And now I have a mirror that's showing me, ooh, Angie, this is ugly, and you need to deal with that. And it's an opportunity to grow. I think we always look at it as it's so like, oh, it's about us. And I think people are like, well, I don't want to work on this. But what about the growth that God is trying to give you an opportunity? We say we want to be more like Christ, but do we want to pay the cost to really be like him? Because sometimes when he puts the mirror up, it's like, ouch. And I don't know if I want to pay the cost to really be more.
I'm going to just go get a new mirror because the mirror is broken.
Yes, that's what we do a lot of times.
Right. So that's what I'm hearing from this too.
Mirror going to show you the exact same thing.
Right. It's just the opportunity for growth. I'm hearing so much of that because I do see how he can show me, how it's easy to look at somebody, just like you were saying with the finger, like you do, but it's hard to see them 3 fingers pointing, it's hard to see us. So marriage is that mirror that I don't know if we want to see, but that's what I'm hearing from. I'm hearing a lot of stuff. You've said such good stuff in this session. Yeah. But that's one of the nuggets I'm getting out of it.
Yeah. One of the things, and I think you said your mama said, you take you wherever you
go.
And that's real.
And I think that's a real comment. But then also I love this. And this is just something I've heard many people have said, even in our first episode, when the brother said, even though his wife went out and cheated on him, he said, hey, I still had to own my part in that. And so
listen, they don't want to hear it. And I tell them, if people get offended, that in a marriage, you are 50% of the problem. I don't care what it is. You're 50% of the problem. You're here. Even if you, because there's something, there's something, you are 50% of the problem. If I break it down and we keep going through it, I can point out something that you could have done differently.
And I know there's couples who don't want to hear that, because even we have couples who still come to us, or couples we used to counsel, and the whole conversation is them trying to prove their point why that person is so wrong. You know what I mean? So it's
That's a good point again. That's a good point.
You're missing the point. And those are the couples that'll be with you for a year, not longer, because they're not doing the work.
Yeah. Let's do the work, people. Let's do
let's do it.
Well, we are past our hour, so we are going to wrap it up. I mean, I still got stuff I want to ask you, but we'll have to do that after the show, and maybe we'll have an after show or something. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And just thank you, Kelli, for your insight, wisdom. You're just a well deep of wisdom when it comes to this. And so if you guys are listening to this and took some nuggets, some gems, because she dropped a lot of them, I would encourage you, if you need some counseling, some therapy, need to communicate better, you can reach out to us. You can reach out to Kelli. Kelli, how can folks find you out there on the interwebs?
Honestly, the easiest way to just go to the website. All the points of contact are there. So it's just centeredlivingcounseling.com. So it's centered with an ED on the end, livingcounseling.com.
All right, folks, there you go. Go to centeredlivingcounseling.com to catch up with Kelli. And you can find all of her social media and all those things right there.
And again, for all of our listeners, we would love to hear from you. Any type of comments. Again, share this information. If this is something that you have listened to and you feel like this is somebody that you know, or again, educate yourself, please share this information. Click subscribe. We want to hear from you guys. Again, we just started, and we definitely want to hear you, because again, this is another Living Well production, but this is Love for Real podcast.
Woohoo!
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.